All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Schwab, and I'm the Associate Director for International House and Special Programs here at Illinois State University. On behalf of the Office of International Studies and Programs, I would like to formally welcome you all to the Spring 2022 International Seminar Series titled ISU International Engagement. This series is one of many programs developed by our office to assist in comprehensive campus internationalization and emphasize the benefits of social, cultural, and linguistic knowledge beyond what is represented in our home countries. This semester, the series is focusing on a wide variety of internationalization efforts taking place on the ISU campus. All of our events will be available as Zoom webinars. As an attendee, you can submit questions to the Q&A function, which we will relay to the presenters after the presentation. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Alex Ratcliff-Hanger, the Associate Director for Study Abroad in the Office of International Studies. For those of you who attended last week's Student Perspectives on Study Abroad session, you will already be familiar with Alex. Alex joined the ISU Office of International Studies and Programs in 2011 as a study abroad advisor. In 2018, she completed her master's degree in communication from ISU and was promoted to study abroad coordinator. In August of 2019, she moved into her current role as Associate Director for Education Abroad. Alex has also experienced studying and teaching abroad as well. While earning her BA from Miami University in American and United States Studies and Civilization, Alex spent a semester abroad in Florence, Italy. After completing her degree, she spent a year teaching English in China. Alex will be moderating today's session on faculty-led study abroad. I would now like to welcome Alex to tell us a little bit about the types of faculty-led study abroad programs at ISU, and then introduce today's faculty panelists. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Matt. I'm excited to be here. So as Matt mentioned, I am going to give a brief overview of the types of study abroad programs. So give me one moment. Okay. So hopefully you're able to see my screen. You should see explore your options with a small little graph of sorts. So study abroad generally, when we talk about study abroad options, we generally categorize them in two types. So the first type of study abroad program is a direct enroll program. So a direct enroll program is pretty much what it sounds like. So you are directly enrolling in a host institution or a partner institution. While you're there, you have the ability to fully immerse in that host institution. So you are taking student classes with all of the local students. You live in the housing for that school. You get a questionable ID picture, the whole experience. So for direct enroll, typically you look at it in terms of semester and summer. As you can see, semester, you're there for about 4 months, and you take about 3 or 4 classes while you're there. And for the summer, it is the exact same experience. It's just a little bit more condensed. So for the summer, instead of 4 months, you're looking at about 4 weeks. Instead of 4 classes, you're looking at maybe 1 or 2 classes during that time. In either of those, for direct enroll, as we mentioned, you do become a guest student at that host institution. So you have full access to all their facilities, and it's an overall great experience. However, while that is a great experience for some, it is not the only option. Another type of program that we have is faculty-led programs. So faculty-led programs are kind of what they sound like. You have an ISU faculty member that goes over with a group of ISU students to a host country. While they're there, they typically are there between, as you can see, you can go between 10 days and 6 weeks. But our programs tend to be 3 to 4 weeks long, or 2 to 4 weeks long. While you're there, you're typically taking 1, maybe 2 classes. But the perks of a faculty-led program or a short-term program are that you are with an ISU faculty member, and it is a group program. So as a part of that, there are more excursions or activities that are included. It tends to be very hands-on. So for example, we do have some programs that are nursing and they go to a local clinic. We have education programs and they're able to do observation hours. So it's a really great way to really immerse yourself and get some tangible experience with that subject matter in a very unique way. So the two types of programs are direct enroll and faculty-led, but much like study abroad, nothing is as simple as that. So there is a lot of crossover in that. So some of our faculty-led programs actually work with host institutions. So they help provide a framework or a campus. They provide opportunities to engage with local communities or businesses. And so while we say that there are two types of programs, there really is a lot of overlap with that. So that's why I'm quite excited about our panel today. We have a wide variety of experiences to talk about. We have programs that go from 2 weeks up to 4 weeks. They're earning 1 class or 2 classes. Some of them are traveling, some of them are with a host institution and really engaging with that local community. So I'm quite excited about our panel. If you give me 1 moment. Oh, goodness. So I will stop sharing my screen. Okay, and let me start introducing our panelists for today. So I'm quite excited. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our 3 faculty members who will share their experiences with leading study abroad programs for today. So our first panelist is Dr. Joseph Goodman, an associate professor of management and quantitative methods here at Illinois State University. Dr. Goodman received his PhD in human resource management and organizational behavior from the University of Mississippi, a Master of Arts degree in industrial and organizational psychology from Louisiana Tech University, and a Bachelor of Science degree with honors from the University of Southern Mississippi. Prior to 2007, he did not possess a passport. In 2017, he renewed his sparsely stamped passport and has traveled to 17 countries. He inadvertently created a bucket list goal to eat a McDonald's Big Mac on every continent. Only 2 continents elude this goal. The more important goal is encouraging first-generation college students to study abroad. So I believe Dr. Joseph Goodman has hopped on. You want to give a wave?
Bonjour.
And next up, our next panelist is Dr. Montserrat Mir. So Dr. Mir was born in Barcelona, Spain, and has a BA in English Studies from the University of Barcelona, a master's in TESOL from the University of Illinois, a PhD in education with an emphasis on second language acquisition and teacher education. Dr. Montserrat Mir joined ISU in 1997 and currently holds the position of Professor of Spanish and Applied Linguistics Language Coordinator. Some of the courses taught by Dr. Montserrat Mir include Spanish language and linguistics and foreign language pedagogy. Dr. Montserrat Mir research interests include Spanish pragmatics instruction, and foreign language pedagogy. Whew. Welcome, Dr. Mir. And the last but definitely not least is our third panelist. So today is Dr. Noha Shawki, a professor in the Department of Politics and Government. Her teaching and research focus on transnational social movements, global governments, and international norms with a substantive focus on human rights and sustainable development. She strongly believes in the value of experiential and immersive learning and fostering global engagement and global citizenship among students. She has led the Model United Nations program at ISU for many years and has traveled many times with students domestically and internationally. Her work at ISU has been recognized with a number of awards. Welcome, Dr. Shawki. Perfect. I believe you're all muted. So I have a whole list of questions for you. I'm quite excited to be able to talk to you today. Before we get officially started, can you give us just an idea of how you got involved in international education? Since we went alphabetically, shall we start with Joe?
Sure. I have an accidental stumble into international education. To do this really briefly, in 2007, I wrote a proposal that I expected someone else was going to collect the data. I was summoned to the university president's office, and he said, this was April, and he said, can you go in May? And I had to sit and explain that I did not own a passport. And at the time, the US was switching the rules for passport eligibility to the Caribbean, Canada, and Mexico. So there was no way to expedite a passport. And he asked me why I didn't own a passport. And I said, well, you just don't need one to go from Louisiana to Mississippi. It's just not required. Some might think it is, but it does. And so anyway, I had a passport. I went to Romania. I collected data. I came back home and just let my passport sit on the shelf and expire. And then my son had a gap year between high school and college, and he lived in England for 2 years. And then my son-in-law, who I knew as he was in high school, he had a gap year, and he lived in Chile for 2 years. And then my daughter, who is in her MBA program, is texting me from Ireland, and she says, Dad, I'm doing things that I never even thought was important to me. And that made me sit and reflect. It's like, I'm missing out on something to help education wise. And so I renewed my passport and decided I'm going to start taking students abroad. And that's how I ended up doing what I do.
Very nice. Dr. Mir.
All right, my story is a little bit different because I came to this country as an international student.
Oh.
So I was the recipient of the international education, and back in Spain, in my time, in my generation, colleges did not have study abroad programs. Now, since the last maybe 10, 15 years, I have a big study abroad program in Europe called Erasmus. So there are a lot of Europeans who travel, European students who travel, but not in my time. So I came here as an international student, and besides being an international student, once I finish as a student, I become a professor. I have always been involved with international students on campus. And since I'm in the Department of Languages and my field in second language acquisition, I have always been interested in immersion opportunities for our language learners. So definitely going abroad was the right way to do this. And I approached the International Students Office here at ISU a few years ago about the possibility of creating this faculty-led program in Spain. And we've been doing this for the last 7 or 8 years, and it's been quite successful.
Very nice. Dr. Shawki, I know you have multiple experiences in a couple of different programs, but how did you get involved in international education?
Sure. So my teaching and research have a strong global focus. So I'm a political scientist, and my area within political science is international relations and comparative politics. So as Alex said in her introduction, in her very kind introduction, I study transnational social movements that focus on sustainable development and human rights. So the subject matter I teach just lends itself really well to study abroad. But beyond that, beyond subject matter, I came to really develop a commitment to experiential and immersive learning experiences. I had an opportunity early in my career at ISU to observe firsthand just how much students learn when they have active learning opportunities and immersive learning opportunities. When I was first hired at ISU, I was asked to teach the Model United Nations course. So this is a course that culminates in a week-long simulation of United Nations negotiations in New York City. And after 2 years of doing this program, my first 2 years at ISU, it became very clear to me that we have many, many students who learn best when they have these kinds of immersive learning opportunities. So my experience with Model UN those first 2 years really motivated me and inspired me to develop other immersive learning opportunities for students. And since I study social movements, I occasionally travel to social movement events, like events that bring together social movement participants and community activists and organizers. So I started developing independent study courses around these events, and I started inviting students to just join me and get a glimpse into my research, but also just experience social movements and learn in a very experiential way. And then the next step was to start taking students abroad. So that is sort of my story, but like Dr. Mir, I also came to the United States as an international student. So I know how eye-opening international education can be, and how big an opportunity and how valuable an opportunity it is.
Very nice, thank you. So I know about your programs, but would you be able to give a brief overview of your program? And Dr. Shawki, if you want to go ahead and start, since you maybe location, how long your program is, and the subject matter.
Sure. So the program that I have done most often is a program in Costa Rica that is focused on fair trade and the fair trade movement. In terms of the location, there are many different countries in which one could study about fair trade and the fair trade movement, but Central America's proximity to the United States makes the program just more accessible. We could study fair trade in Asia or Africa, but just the flight costs would be, a big barrier to a lot of students. So part of the reason why I chose Costa Rica is it's a program site or program location that could help keep costs down. So this is like one reason for Costa Rica, but the other reason is also that ISU has a partner university in San Jose, Veritas University, and they have really been wonderful in terms of helping us coordinate the program and taking care of a lot of the logistical details. The first time we went to Costa Rica, it was with a different vendor. It was with a small business, but they were a bit more limited in what they could do for us. And Veritas University really could help us plan a very different kind of programs. And one of the things that they do is they coordinate homestays. So students don't stay in hotels, they stay with host families. And that is actually a highlight for a lot of our students. They love their homestays. So this is another really important reason why I like working with Veritas University. And they're also just really flexible, always open to suggestions and special requests, and just a joy to work with. So this is sort of the reason why we chose Costa Rica as the program site for the Fair Trade program. Alex, did you want me to talk about any other programs?
Not at this moment. That was a good overview. And I think, did you mention it's about 10 days to 2 weeks?
Yeah, more like 10 days.
More like 10 days. Perfect. Dr. Mir, would you like to hop in?
Okay, so our program is located in a town west of Madrid. Madrid is the capital of Spain, so it's in the center of the country. And the town is called Avila, and they have a branch of the University of Salamanca, which is one of the largest universities in Spain. And so we go to this town called Avila, and we stay there for 4 weeks in the month of June. And we partner with the University of Salamanca. We offer 2 classes. The accompanying faculty member teaches 1 class, and then the university faculty members from the University of Salamanca teach another class. And the program was designed particularly targeting our Spanish minors. So it is designed in a way that when they come to Avila with us, they finish the minor there. So that's what's been something very appealing to them. And our students as well stay with families because part of the program is also to help learners perfect their language skills in Spanish. And I chose this particular program, and I created this program because when I approached University of Salamanca about the possibility of doing this, they were very, very flexible. And I was looking for a program that I could customize to my goals. And I didn't want a program where they tell me what to do. So in that way, that's worked pretty well for us.
Very nice. And how long have we been working with the university?
I think probably it's been like 8 or 9 years now, right?
Yeah. It's been a good relationship with them.
Yeah.
Dr. Goodman, tell us about your program.
So my program is anywhere from 14 to 17 days in northern Romania. I do not take students into Bucharest. I can explain why later. But I chose the program because of its geographical and political location. Romania is situated right there on the cusp of everything. And you can see even now important that's happening in history. They've seemed to have been conquered by lots of folks because it's a very popular land to traverse across. And so it's given this unique, rich, diverse kind of population. I wanted to choose, because of the students I target, I wanted to choose a location that was safe. I wanted to choose a location intentionally that was based on a Romance language, because I know most students who come to the university have studied at least Spanish or French, and Romanian is a Romance-based language. So even in the worst of situations, when they go vorbeste inglese and the guy goes, Mir, they can actually say, they can write things down and they can pick apart and use their old Spanish or French to say, oh, carne, meat, I want meat. And it's those little things. The people of Romania are absolutely loving and caring and giving. And then to echo other comments was cost. I wanted to be able to get students an experience, more than 2 weeks, but not break their pocketbook. And so at the time of this recording, we're 17 days in Romania for right around $3,600 all in. And that was very important to me, especially for these first generation students who never thought that they wanted to do this.
Very nice. And you did mention 17 days is the program length?
14 to 17. It depends on, I try to situation my trip in between some festivals. Each city in Romania does large summer festivals on the weekend. So I try to pin them in between what's called the Days of Cluj, that's Cluj-Napoca, Romania festival. And then there is a film festival that comes on the tail end of it called the Transylvania Film Festival. And it's just phenomenal to watch the students interact with people from many, many lands at the same time.
Very nice. So you have all sort of touched on it in different ways, but I am interested in the academic side of things. So I think a myth with study abroad is that you go and you have this amazing time and you take all these pictures, but what are you actually doing? And so I am interested about integrating the academics into, it is called study abroad, so there is definitely a study component into it. So how do you integrate those? And I have some follow-up questions if you'd like in terms of activities or the excursions and whatnot. Dr. Mir, would you like to start off with this one?
Sure. I think I already mentioned a little bit about this, but as I said, our students get 6 credits. So they take 2 classes, and both of them, the one the faculty member teaches is one of the classes that we typically teach here. So that would work. And the one that is offered by the Spanish faculty member there, we told them what we wanted. So it could transfer to one of the Spanish classes that we offer here that also required for the minor. So in that sense, it worked pretty well. And of course, learning a language is perhaps the major motivation of this study abroad program. So one of the important elements for me, I chose Avila, for example, instead of Madrid or a big city, because I didn't want to be around too many foreigners. I wanted my students to be immersed in a local community as much as possible and have the day-to-day experience of living with a Spanish family and having the meals at the time they're supposed to have and getting lost in the city and so on. So, so that's why we chose that. And that part of that cultural learning experience is perhaps one of the most beneficial of all these programs, and what the students remember the most. They remember that more than the classes that they take. But in terms of making it equivalent to what we do here, it was very, very easy, because again, I teach one of the classes, or if another colleague of mine teaches the other class. So it has worked very, very well.
And so they're taking 2 classes during the month that you're there. What does their week look like? Do they have like a very structured week, or?
Yeah, so we because they have to do the work of the 2 classes like they would be here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So, it is quite intense. Classes are in the mornings, so they have one class from 9:30. They have classes for 4 hours in the mornings, and mornings in Spain are longer because our main meal of the day is around 3 p.m. Between 2 and 3 p.m. So they are there in the school between 9 until 2 or so. And then afternoons they are free, but they have homework. And I emphasize when I talk to the students, I always tell them, yes, this is an experience for you to go abroad, but you're taking classes. So yes, you're going to be doing our homework. And they complain. Yes, they complain about the fact that they would like not to have to do all this homework and so on. But I say, but you're getting 6 credits. And talking about the cost, it is a very, it's not too bad considering that they're getting 6 credits and they're abroad. So they know that they have to study, yes. And weekends are free, but every day from 9 to 2, they're in the classroom in the mornings.
And do you have excursions that are built in with that? Does the school take them places or?
What I've been doing again, and that's what I love Apila, is because what I tell them that I need, they do. And for example, initially they would provide like 2 extracurricular activities, 2 afternoons a week. And then I realized that many of the students were not really interested in some of these activities. So I did 1. So at least we meet together once a week to do, for example, one of the activities, one of the teachers there teaches, she's a flamenco dancer. So for example, one of the activities is that she teaches flamenco to the students one afternoon.
Yeah.
But then the excursions that we have planned for the weekends, I wanted a programming way. I didn't want to be, and maybe it's a little bit selfish of me, but I didn't want to be the parent. I didn't want to be responsible for the students all the time. So they know I'm there. I tell them we do excursions on the weekends, but they are not planned together. We don't go together. I say, okay, this weekend, Monse, is going to this town. This is the hotel I'm going to be staying. That's the train that I'm taking. And then whoever wants to come, they can come, but they need to make their own travel arrangements. They need to make their own hotel arrangements. But they know that in that city where I'm going to be at that weekend, I am there if they need me. And so I see them for a few minutes on a Saturday in that city, and then they're off to do one of their own things. So it has worked very well because I really wanted the students also to experience being independent. And that's some of the things that they enjoy. They like the faculty-led program because for many of them, they have never been abroad and they are afraid of going abroad. So the fact that I am going with them makes them feel a bit better. But the fact that they need to do all these traveling arrangements on their own forces them to be independent. And by the end of the 4 weeks, all of them, that's one of the things that I always ask them, what did you enjoy the most? And one of the things they say is that I feel much more confident about my traveling abilities and the fact that I can really travel abroad and survive and do things. So that's why I created the program the way it is.
Perfect. Dr. Shawki, would you like to chime in terms of how you fit an entire semester class into 10 days?
Sure. So typically before traveling, students spend quite a bit of time reading scholarly sources about the topic that we're studying. So in the case of the Costa Rica program, that's fair trade. So they have assigned readings. Academic rigor is important to me. Dr. Mir has already mentioned that they are taking a class. It's not just a trip. So academic rigor is something I do emphasize. So before the trip, they do quite a bit of readings, and I strongly feel that they can actually get more out of the immersive component of the program if they are knowledgeable about the topic, because that gives them some context, and they can process what they're seeing and doing and hearing when they're abroad a lot better if they have some background knowledge. We also meet as a group several times before we travel. We discuss the readings that they've completed. They also write reflections on those readings. So there's a writing component as well. And that prepares them to really benefit from the time that they are spending abroad. When we are abroad in Costa Rica, we spend a lot of time on fair trade certified farms. We visit fair trade cooperatives. We talk with co-op leaders, with farmers, and they tell us a lot about fair trade, what it means to them and to their families and their communities, why they're passionate about sustainable agriculture. And students take notes. They are asked to keep a journal. And when we come back, they have a writing assignment that is based on these journal entries, and they provide some reflection on what they've learned and connect what they've learned while we were in Costa Rica to the readings that they did before we left for Costa Rica. And then they spend the remainder of the semester working individually on a research project on fair trade. In the case of the Costa Rica program, it's fair trade. And this research project is basically a deeper dive into one aspect of fair trade that they are particularly interested in and passionate about, and about which they just would like to learn a bit more. So they do these independent research projects after the trip. So that is how my programs typically are structured. One other program that I've done is focused on an event. So it's structured the same way. So they prepare in the same way. They do a lot of reading, a lot of writing. We meet to discuss the readings, but then they travel to an event called World Water Week in Stockholm, Sweden. And that's an event that brings together stakeholders from around the world that focus on water and sustainable development. So they go to workshops, they go to events, they talk to people, they hear people's stories about the work that they're doing to make safe safe water available to everyone, and to manage water resources in the context of a changing climate. And again, they come back, they reflect on the experience, they reflect on the stories that they heard, and they connect them to what they studied before we went. And then there's also that component of a research project. So my programs are structured similarly in that way.
So it sounds like a lot of reading and discussion before they leave. So there's a good framework and a good foundation. They are busy. Sounds like they're busy during their program. And then there is still a little bit of independence to do a project that they're interested in, to have a focus area.
Exactly. And like Dr. Mir, there is a little bit of downtime built into the program. So typically a lot of my programs end on a weekend, and they have that weekend to do whatever they want before they return back to the US.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. Now, Dr. Goodman, you're in a unique position that your program is in between both Dr. Mir and Dr. Shawki. So I think Dr. Mir's is 4 weeks. Dr. Shawki's is about 10 days, 2 weeks, and you're kind of in that 3-week span. Tell me a little bit more about the academic side of your program.
For the academic side, like Dr. Shawki, I do a lot of any book work or legwork on the front end. So my program, if we're going to depart in May, my participants are selected right around the 1st of February. And when they return from spring break in our semester, we start meeting weekly and getting together and going over things. And I've sold them now in the country. Now I've got to bring back the academics. I've lured you in because you knew about Harry Potter and Romania and dragons, or you had some idea about vampires. Now I'm going to really teach you about the country. So we do a lot of legwork up front, getting together. We'll do anywhere from 4 to 6 meetings. And there's pre-departure assignments, and we learn about Romas and Romanis and why they're not Romanians, and why we don't say certain words when we're in country, and why when you're walking down the street, when you smile at Romanians, they're not going to smile back at you, and why, these little bitty things. And so we start with that, and then pre-departure. I'm a little odd in this because, like Dr. Mir says, you don't want to be their parent, but I've got so many students who this is the first time they've probably left Illinois, much less, they're now going to a foreign country. I need to know who my picky eaters are going to be. And so I invite the students who are going over to, my wife is so gracious. She really is so gracious. We prepare a traditional Romanian meal, and the whole time she's helping me understand who's eating what, so that I know who my picky eater is going to be. And I need just like, okay, we're going to have to figure out how to get you food.
We're going to have a chat.
Correct. And I've had a student, I kid you not, she lived on bagels and croissants for 14 days. I don't know how, but I was like, okay. And it was sad. To circle back to that, when she graduated, she said that her best experience was going to Romania. And the whole time in Romania, I was thinking, this girl's having a miserable time. But it was for her, it was a highlight of her undergraduate career. So while we're in country, I do things, I do more indirect or head fake learning with the students. The day will begin about 8 a.m. Shortly after breakfast. They're responsible for breakfast on their own. This is where we're going to meet. I stay at universities or at accommodations that keep us all close and tight together, have some kind of meeting room. We don't stay at hostels. I don't have any reason why. It's just been easier for me to get compounds, and the University of Transylvania, Babiš Bojev, graciously let us use their
You
dorms.
mentioned there's more of a meeting area. So if you
There's,
have more
yeah, there's a,
accommodations, there's more classrooms or meeting areas, and it's just easier to connect with that.
yeah, somewhere. So we gather about 8 a.m. And each day has a theme where I am priming them. I realize that if I'm going to do indirect learning, I need to prime you for the day because these are the things I want you to look for. For example, if the theme of the day is self-efficacy and learned helplessness, one of the activities I'm going to take you to is a bear sanctuary, where the presenters are running a not-for-profit bear rescue center. And they talk about, well, they can't release these bears to the wild because they don't understand how to be free. And I set it up and I teach students, how can we relate this back to maybe something our employees are doing, or maybe we're trying to recruit people from different demographics, and to see them come back to it, because management's all about the soft skills. The hard skills they can get. So I'm really focused on the hard skills. So I do those daily things. So, learn helpless. When I take them to the Communism Memorial, that day's theme is trust and justice.
Mhm.
And I prime them, and then we take them to the Communist Memorial and the unnamed graves. And they keep a daily journal on that. The daily theme, if we're interacting, I have the students, I'm very structured up until about 6:37 p.m. at night.
Okay.
You're with me, you're running with me, get in, let's go. The students know we're going to average about 7 miles of walking per day,
Whew.
which is unusual for our students because they don't understand how we can't just pull a car up and park and walk in a building. Like, no, we're taking the train, we're taking the trolley, and then we're going to walk to where we have to get. And so, we will meet with government officials. I have them meet with the political officials of Cluj-Napoca, Sighișoara, and Brașov. And they get to talk to them, and the city officials pretend not to understand English. I pretend to not understand Romanian, and the students have prepared questions that they've generated that they have to interact and learn with each other. So they do their prepared journals. Another learning activity I do, you can just cut me off, say, okay, that's enough. But I find this one is absolutely wonderful. Is we rent a home in Braun, Romania. The Wi-Fi is not all that good, and they have a Lidl, which is, for us in the US, it's like an Aldi. And the students, we're going to be there for 3 days, and the students are responsible for planning the meals. And it's part of their budget money, and we budget the money, and they have to come together as a group to plan out the meals, because there's no stores to go buy or restaurants to eat in.
Oh.
We're pinned down, so we drop them off at Lidl and say, hey, you've got about 4 hours to plan your meals, and nothing can be a pre-prepared packaged item. And then they're shopping in this grocery store by themselves, and they're planning out meals for 4 to 10 people.
You're throwing in some small group stuff in there too.
Yeah, and that's what everything that I do is kind of like the indirect learning, because and then we reflect on it in the evening, and then I cut them loose and then say, hey, do what you want to do, and don't be smart. But I'm still always worried. I check in with me when you come back in.
The only thing that's majorly different beyond location and duration and topic and many other details is that your program actually travels. So with Dr. Mir's, it is in one location, and while they may have some weekend things that they do have a home base. And with Dr. Shawki's, they're really in kind of one location with, again, some small excursions with that. But I think you travel throughout Romania as a part of your program.
I do. I move. I typically move every 2 to 3 days to a different location. We fly into and out of Cluj-Napoca, Romania, and we end there. But we will rotate through several of the counties and different regions of Romania. So I'll take them all the way to the Moldova border, to the Ukrainian border, and to the Hungarian-Bulgaria border, and back to Cluj.
Very nice. So I do know that we're running a little bit closer to time. I don't know what question to land on, but I'm going to go with, what do you think are the benefits of studying abroad? So obviously you have your particular programs, and you can go broad, or you can say with your experiences with your particular program. And I don't know who to start with. Joe, you're already on mic.
Sure, I'll go, because what I what I like is, especially with Romania, if we want our students to have a broader or less than ethnocentric mindset, Romania is kind of that location to do it, because it forces them to think about topics differently. For example, they may want to think of diversity as a skin tone type issue, but here they are now in Romania where everyone has the same skin tone, but it's more of a deep value or a religious fractions that kind of butt up against each other, and they've got to reconcile that difference. Well, what is, when we talk about diversity, what are we really meaning? And when we talk about inclusion, and in one of the cities that I'm in, I show them that I take them to the Romanian Opera House and to the Hungarian Opera House, and they do not intermingle with each other. And we get to talk to the students about why.
Yeah.
And it's, because the area is considered both Romania and Hungary, and so it's fun to see them. So those types of learning experiences, I think, really make a difference. And again, as a manager, those going into business really need those soft skills. And this program really helps get them out of things that they're comfortable to, makes them more understanding, see those soft skills, and hopefully make them better managers along the way.
Very nice. I don't know who I've gone in order with. I don't know if Dr. Shawki, if you want to give your perspective on what are some of the benefits of studying abroad.
Absolutely. As has been mentioned before, for many of our students, the opportunity to participate in a study abroad program is their first opportunity to travel abroad. And experiencing another country and another culture can really round out their education at ISU in really important and meaningful ways. Study abroad can also help students reflect on the question of what it means to be living in an increasingly interdependent world, and on what their daily choices mean for people around the world, because my programs focus on human rights, sustainable development, and global justice. These are things, these reflections are things that can be a powerful tool for learning, I think. So that is also something that's important to me. Study abroad can simply foster a sense of global citizenship and a sense of global moral responsibility. And that is, I think, important for our students, and it definitely is consistent with ISU's goals of internationalization and civic engagement and global engagement. And then finally, meeting people from very different walks of life and with very different life experiences can be very eye-opening for students. So when we visit and talk with smallholder farmers in Costa Rica, the lives of these farmers and their life experiences are so very different from what our students know and have experienced and have seen, let's say in the Chicago suburbs, that hearing the stories of these farmers can really be powerful and transformative for a lot of our students.
Very nice. And so Dr. Mir, having the last word.
All right, I have 2 points that I would like to mention. First is the importance of, in the program that I have, one student lives with a Spanish family. So there's only one student per family. And before we go, the students are terrified. And these are students who speak some Spanish already. So they know some Spanish. And we take the train from Madrid to Avila together. And at the train station, we meet with all the families, and I just say goodbye to everyone. And it's really funny on that hour train trip that I'm sitting in the train and I hear my students on the back, and they're going like, so how do you say this? And I want to say that. And they are so terrified of meeting these families. By the end of the 4th week that we're there, everyone is in tears because they are leaving. Parents, host parents, and the students. And the experience of living with a Spanish family for my students is what they remember the most. And my parents came to visit me many years ago when I was a graduate student for the first time. And I wanted to show them the great things about the United States. So I took them to see national parks.
Yeah.
They enjoyed everything. They loved the pictures, the scenery. And then for 2 days, we went to Denver in Colorado, and we stayed with some friends that I have that are American. And they were so nice that they allow us to stay in their home. And we were there for 2 days doing nothing.
Yeah.
When we left, my parents remember the national parks. They remember parks and places. But those 2 days with that American family made a huge impact to them. And these were middle-class people. They were not wealthy or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just being inside of the home, waking up, having breakfast with them, sitting on the couch doing nothing, being inside an American home was so important. As an international student myself, when I came to this country, that's exactly what I didn't have. I was an international student in a big university, and I live in that campus, but I didn't know anything about American culture. And I still remember the first time an American professor invited me to his place for dinner, and being inside of a home. So the study abroad program, specifically the one that I have, the idea of living with with a Spanish family makes a big difference. And that's what the study abroad is all about, is that you are immersed in the culture. You're not a tourist. And here's my second point. Even the 3 programs that we are here represented are very different. I think that the experiences that we provide to the students are are selected in a way that they are, it's not just they're tourists. They're not just visiting a festival, or they're just seeing this bridge. We faculty members have made a decision, a very conscious decision about why we want them to take them there and where they're going to learn that it's more than just a bridge. So it is not that students are tourists. They are really learners. And I think that's the key factor in keeping these study abroad programs so in point and just doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. The word that I would add to that would be intentionality. So I think you were very intentional about the activities that you're choosing and the readings that you're choosing and how you're engaging the students before, during, and after their program. I know that Matt is probably yelling, so I thank you so much. I need to give it to Matt and Linda to facilitate any questions. And I think I see some questions popping up in the chat.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to all of our panelists for your informative presentation. Yeah, we're starting to get some questions in here, so I'm just going to start in just of time. But what about COVID this year? How has that changed plans, impacted things? I don't know if everyone just wants to talk a little bit about that, but yeah.
I'll hop in from the office side of things. So COVID has been interesting and transformational from a study abroad office perspective. I won't get into all the details, but I think above all, it has really strengthened our relationships with our host institutions and our providers. So our communication is great, and I feel very good about the services and the support available at all of our host sites. So from an admin perspective, COVID had many other side things, but in a positive light, I really think that our relationships with our partners and our host institutions have been strengthened from this, and it really has opened up our communication with them. In terms of actually running a program, I'll defer to our faculty directors in terms of things that they're considering or ways that it may have impacted their future program plans.
In our case, our program has not been running for 2 years. I have to say, it's not my decision. My daughter has been studying abroad in the fall in Spain. Fine, everyone with masks in the middle of Delta, Omicron, and everything is fine. So I know every institution is different. So, but I'm hoping to take these students this year, and the number is much more reduced of students interested in going. So I think there's still some fear, but from the perspective of the host university in Spain, they have not provided any difficulties for us to go this summer. So I think everything, at least in my case, I think everything is back to sort of normal.
Normal, if you will.
For me, the universities in Romania that I interact with are still online. And I spoke with my contacts there, and because I like to get the students together from all three universities, we opted to postpone this year because it was just not going to work. Now, I could have taken students as tourists, but that's not the purpose of this. So we are not doing a 2022 session.
For me, the Costa Rica program this spring was canceled by the university. So we would be getting ready to leave very soon because we would be away over spring break. But the university in the fall, the decision had to be made in the fall, and nobody at the time could have predicted that the situation would be improving by the spring. But postponing the decision beyond October just wasn't possible because the financial and academic implications of canceling last minute are just too great. So we can't go to Costa Rica this spring, but I am planning 2 smaller study abroad programs in the fall with students. Both are in Europe. And I'm hoping that that will work out. I'm optimistic that that we can do those programs. The timeline has shifted a little bit because there is some level of uncertainty still surrounding the pandemic. I talked to Alex, and she was really gracious and really flexible, and she allowed us to change the timeline and the structure of the application process a little bit so that we can finalize everything not in March but in May. So that buys us a little bit of extra time before students have to commit to the program. And I really appreciate the flexibility at OISP. That really helps a lot with planning. At this point, I'm actively talking to students. They're very excited. They are also hopeful and optimistic that we can travel and have that experience in the fall. I didn't want to wait until next spring to offer Costa Rica again. I am offering it, but we have so many students who are now juniors and seniors whose time in college was totally overshadowed by this pandemic, and they missed out on so many opportunities, and some of them are graduating in December. So Costa Rica next spring is just not an option for them. So that is why I wanted to have, other alternatives for students who really missed out on so many opportunities. And it's unfortunate just that their college experience was so diminished by this pandemic.
So I didn't want to talk about their programs. In terms of study abroad in general, we are slowly ramping back up. So summer, most of our programs for host institutions are up and running, faculty-led, kind of taking a little bit slower start, but we're hoping that by academic year, what are we in, 22, 23, things will be, as Dr. Mir said, mostly normal. So relatively back to normal.
All right, I'm going to throw one out here. I have a question from an international student who is asking whether or not international students could potentially study abroad in their home countries for credit. So Alex, I think this probably applies more to you.
Oh, for me. Oh, okay. So yes, that is possible. Definitely come and talk to the study abroad office. I think it's going to depend on what country you're looking to go to, what relationships we have, and academics a little bit, but come and talk to us and we can see what we can make happen.
And then we had actually planned a session around this. So I will say we don't have to get into it too deeply, but if just talking about how these study abroad programs kind of came into being, how that institutional partnership or relationship was founded. I don't know if each person wants to go around, but again, just kind of getting into that just a little bit. You don't have to go in depth, but I know that there are audience members who are curious about that.
Well, I'm going to start. In my case, I just had a colleague who introduced me to this other professor in Avila, and they told me about that they were hosting Spanish students and I am international students. And everything started from there. And I approached OISP and they said, well, let's talk to them. And eventually we went to visit. I went there with someone from OISP and we visited the campus and we talked to people there and we looked at the town and everything. And then we just signed the agreement between both institutions with the help of course, International Students Office and the legal group. And that was just, it was, I mean, it's a lengthy process, but it was not difficult. I don't think so.
To get into my first university was essentially a cold call. I reached out to a university in Cluj that I knew taught business in English only. And in reaching out to them, that took about 6 months of exchanging emails. Romanians are very trustful, but they're not prone to swift trust. And everything is by introduction. And to move into the University of Sibiu and the University of Transylvania, those took an introduction from Babeș-Bolyai University, and that helped smooth those relationships to open up other opportunities. So I cold called it, and then I got introductions.
And it kind of grew from there.
Girls, yes.
For me, ISU already had a partnership with Veritas University, and Veritas had hosted some of our students for like a whole semester before. So there was already that connection. Somebody at OISP put me in touch with somebody at Veritas who could help me plan the program, and she was really wonderful to work with. I explained to her what my vision for the program was, and she developed some proposals and suggestions that I reviewed, and I gave her feedback, and they updated these proposals. And so it was a smooth process. They were easy to work with. And as I said, they already had an established partnership with ISU.
So from my experience, it seems like usually it's just that someone knows someone at another institution, or a colleague that has just come from one, or it's a relationship that we have, and we're able to connect one of our faculty with a partner that we currently have. I will also note that the overall process of creating a linkage is relatively straightforward, but it does take planning. And so to be able to create that linkage, it takes about a year ahead of when you actually want to run your program. If you're partnering with a host institution, still, if you're using an outside provider of sorts, like a third-party provider that's providing additional support, in order to have all those details finalized and whatnot and contracts signed, you're typically looking at about a year ahead of time, so that you have sufficient time to recruit and get students in and prepare before you leave. Come and talk to us.
All right. Well, I think that's probably a pretty good note to end on here. So I'm going to say that concludes our presentation for today. If we did not get to your question, please feel free to email internationalseminar@IllinoisState.edu, and we will relay that question to our panelists after the fact. We would like to thank Alex, Dr. Goodman, Dr. Mir, Dr. Shawki for their informative panel and answering all of our questions. We sincerely appreciate you taking the time to be with us today and sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you very, very much. So, all right. We would also like to thank all of you who were able to join us today to watch this presentation and support this series. We are proud to continue to offer this series to the ISU and Bloomington Normal community and provide information on issues that impact all of us across the globe. As a reminder, there will not be a series event during the ISU spring break next week. And the next seminar will be on March 16th with the Director of International Admissions, Kayla Carroll. If you have not yet done so, please register at IllinoisState.edu/SeminarSeries. And to everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, and go Redbirds. Take care, everyone.